So, hello everyone. I am Soraya. I am the brand manager of Roll20. We also have here Nolan, the managing partner of Roll20, and Trivia,
Hello.
our licensing director, as well as Jeff, a developer and team lead here at Roll20. So, we are going to kick this off by giving you a preview of our roadmap for what's coming up in the near future for Roll20. Then there's going to be an announcement that is absolutely 100% spoiled if you look right down there about the
Whoops.
dates. No, 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 I did that on purpose. I want you
Oh,
all to see it. But we will officially announce it with our words and voices after we have given you the roadmap. And then we're going to get into some questions. We asked people on the forum to send us questions via a form. We're also going to be taking questions from chat. So we're just going to switch back and forth between the two. It's our way of trying to give everyone a chance to ask questions because we know that not everyone can make it during this hour. So we give the opportunity on the forums to ask those questions in advance. But now that we're here, Nolan, could you walk us through what's coming up on the Roll20 roadmap?
sure. So right now, I'll say a lot of the things that are happening, and this is information that has been given on the forums and been given on the blog. So we were prepared for our main update over the summer to be a layer-related update, and as we have dug into more of the rendering issues with advanced fog of war and dynamic lighting, we've started to go, what ways do we want to synthesize that and to make it work better, and it's put things off. With that, there is still a bunch of things that are happening on the marketplace in terms of data and presentation. There's still a bunch of things that are happening in terms of background data within the tabletop that is speeding things up, and a bunch of things that are happening in terms of bug uh, decomposition. Decomp has become the favorite word within Roll20 in the past. I don't know.
I like,
How long have we been in the decomp era?
I'd say since spring.
Since
Like
spring.
there are seasons to Roll20's word obsessions, and decomp started cropping up around spring.
Yeah,
So
so it's been a good solid year
yeah,
here.
and with that, a project that we just finished behind the scenes, and I've alluded to on the pro forums, as we went back and we looked at essentially all the bugs that we had sitting in our backlog and tried to categorize which one of those might have been miscategorized previously, what of them weren't actually bugs and were instead closer to a feature request or a functionality that somebody had written down, and it was like, yeah, it's never a functionality that's existed, and tried to get some of those things into a place where we could better tackle and triage that pile going forth. And that's the sort of effort uh, that's super duper important to long term health and for an ability to get things done. But I mean, the biggest items that are coming are, there are some marketplace things that I cannot fully announce, and that's not even just licensing. It's half licensing in terms of some things that are going into just going into the Pathfinder 2 launch. I
Mhm.
think is the best vague wand, if you'll allow me that. Some items with how we are loading data into the interface that are changing, and then past that, it's trying to figure out when we are going to reslot the layer up feature.
Mhm.
Um, those are the main public facing items.
Well, there's one
Uh,
small one. Um,
what am I missing on that?
Speaking as
Speaking at,
coming out
well,
next
and
week.
that is already, yeah, I was going to say that's already in testing
Hmm.
and halfway out the door.
Right.
So that I don't give myself us enough credit on the, it's already there, and we're publicly talking about it, and you can deal and interact with that in the same ways.
Hmm.
And I think that you will see a fair amount of things in that smaller space that are going to happen in the immediate coming months. But we are taking some prep time on what the next larger items are, and I'm certain we'll have. And I see already in chat the licensing questions happening, and none of this is a licensing map, which there's a lot going on in licensing land.
Right.
Enough
We
to make, yeah.
we do have our licensing director here, so we will get to that question. But I
Look,
promised that we would start with forum questions, so that's where I'm going to take us next. First, just a little throw this in there. If you all want to keep up with news that's going on at Roll20, I highly recommend the Roll20 rundown that Carlos produces every month. One came out just yesterday. It talks about things like the Speaking as avatar. It gives updates on Advanced Fog of War. We try to make a mixture there of talking about features that are coming out on Roll20, as well as products and streams. So, and it takes like, I think they're like 5, 6 minutes long, Carlos. But yeah, highly recommend checking that out. With that said, now let us go ahead and take some form questions. All right. The first one we have goes right back to what you were just talking about, Nolan, which is what's the lowdown on the layer up update? How many layers will we potentially get? And is there any chance to have multiple map layers that are reactive to their own dynamic lighting layers?
good questions, Monkey. So the intention on the layer up has always been, and you can look back on this in terms of what our conversations have been about it, is that we're starting with one. And that does not necessarily mean that it is isolated to one for all time, but we want to do a little bit of, we want to get some information on what people are using this for as we start to figure out what the parameters on it are. One of the things that we find in building a platform is that you leave it a little bit too broad, and what happens is people come up with all sorts of wild uses that you never quite imagined, and then you have to kind of try to find ways to support those with architecture going forward. And so we want to dip our toes in this before we end up with the 3,000 layers, the infinite future. And so the plan on this
So
has
you heard it
always
here
been,
first,
yeah,
direct from Nolan,
no,
managing partner,
stop,
3,000 layers.
no, no, no.
Roll20 will
But
be like a croissant.
no, no. But with that, I think one of the things that we're so. Um, One of the things that we have done in the redressing and going back and looking at the get a new look update and playing with that has been trying to figure out exactly how much overlap we want to Advanced Fog of War and dynamic lighting as separate systems, and how much we want them integrated into one system or not, and what that means for that. They are technically right now both written in partially different languages. They are not made to fully synthesize. They do not fully play nice with each other, and there are elements of that as so essentially what the get a new look update it made it more performant, which made a huge difference for people. Jeff, do you happen to have any idea what the statistics are in terms of non-access word there? I'm sorry to put you on the spot with that.
Well, in terms of
Believed
actual
non, yeah,
performance,
like believed non-access by non-performance.
um,
A lot would be a
it,
vague
it
one
is a
somewhere.
lot. I mean, we had on sort of the largest maps with a lot of data, we had performance increases of uh, on the order of 100% performance increase. But on average, the number is around 40% for a given instance.
And so within that, this has opened it up to a bunch of folks who previously they tried to use Advanced Fog of War and just went, no. And that's a problem. The issue in the midst of that is as we did that, it changed some of the expected math. And
Mm-hmm.
so the way that we did that was instead of individually checking every cell, we started to make assumptions about the furthest end of that changed some of how people were using it. And so it puts it in a place where some of the ways that people who were able to take advantage of the previous incarnations of it have gotten lost. And I think what's been embarrassing for us in this process is coming back to like our documentation on it is not enough up to snuff in terms of what people were doing that we didn't know that they were doing. And so it's brought us back to the drawing boards in a couple different ways. And within that, we want to try to get it right because we think it impacts the next thing. And so that's that's where all of it sits right now. We are digging back into it and putting more people on it too.
Actually, because we're
Yep.
talking about this, and I happen to know what the next question is with my magical powers, I'll go ahead and put this on the screen because we did have a question from Hades asking about the fixes to dynamic layer lighting and Advanced Fog of War. So we're already talking about that. I'm just now bringing the theme together. So here's an actual question that we did have about it.
So, and within that, we've kept pretty on top of the forum thread, inquiring about this, and been trying to give as much conversation as possible as the process happens. As for this part's in QA right now, this part is we don't know, and so that's a essentially we have decided that we're taking a moment to figure out what the next length is and what it like. There are several band-aid versions of fixes, and there are several bigger reworking fixes, and we are weighing those options. And I think one of the things that is difficult right now is like we need to decomp and figure out some of the middle ground on this before we just go ahead. This is the silver bullet. Jeff, I feel like
well, what we want to do is we want to approach this in a way that is different than the way we did, I guess, prior, which is to say, outline specifically what this functionality wants to do, what you all want it to do, and what we want it to do, and have that clearly defined, and implement it in that way from the start.
And I think this goes to, again, like we've fixed a lot of the math, but it puts it in a place where we're in that regrettable position of like, well, if pescally we weren't actually using this, it would be perfect. And that's a frustrating place in software development to be. And I think it's one that we've all we're coming back and going to the drawing board on some portions of this, going, hey, this is a process. Whoops. And we got to figure out what is different about this in the future. So that's it.
Oracle 44 in the chat wants to know. Well, it said that there needs to be a better way for the GM to know which layer they are on and a faster way to navigate them. Is that something that we have on our?
I would say we agree with that, and that actually, oddly enough, goes less into the layer conversation and more into some of what we are preparing for in the future. I've said in previous roundtables that I think that this may be the year that we get to page navigation. I still think that's a possibility towards the end of the year, and I think that relates more to kind of some user interface, user experience issues that we're definitely agreed, and there needs to be some more indications for that, and that is. But that's being talked about in a different realm than this one.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's take just a little break here to pick on trivia. And switch over to chat questions, because there were two questions that came in about licensing. The first one is, do we have an ETA for Return of the Rune Lords Book 2?
So is it cool if I loop this in with one other question?
Sure.
That was from from what we got on the forum.
Oh.
So
well, then when we get there, we'll just, yeah. Sure.
Okay, cool. You go ahead.
No. Go ahead. You have the answer.
I'm good. No, okay, cool.
Yeah. Go
ahead. This is also the same answer for Out of the Abyss, is what I'm covering. So for Return of the Rune Lords, episode 2, AP2, Out of the Abyss, they're both on my calendar for 2019. But we have some more pressing projects that we're working on, very excited about. So I totally want them out this year, but they take a bit of a they're a little behind the things that we have actual time frames on, right? Like, so for Pathfinder 2 release, all of my resources right now are making sure that is super awesome for release date. And then as we have more time, when some of that stuff is more in place, those are projects that are on the back burner.
Yeah. So. I was hanging out in the Paizo forums the other day and saw somebody asking, does anyone know if Roll20 is going to have Pathfinder 2 support? Yes.
Oh. Yes.
Emphatically, yes. We're very excited about it, and Trivia's team is working very hard to make it super cool.
Yeah.
Continuing to pick on Trivia, are you able to offer alternate maps for the latest D&D products? The new maps they use are great for tabletop, but feel a bit flat when using dynamic lighting.
So this is something that I've been talking about a lot with Dean, who was licensing director, now is operations, and talking about some philosophical things there on whether or not we're able to offer it. And currently right now we don't have the artist resources to do so. But so I have kind of two action items that you can do now as we still talk about philosophically what's possible. One is let Wizards of the Coast know. Like you can give feedback to WotC about their books. So if you would like more Schley maps or something of that nature, let them know. We have some avenues of letting them know, but it's good to get that to them directly. And two is we have so many cool map makers on the marketplace as well that have really awesome map tiles. So you can use even the black and white maps as a backdrop and fill those in with map tiles in a really cool way.
I hadn't thought
So
of that.
there's two action items in the meantime.
And you get to support local, independent artists that way.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, all right, I'm going to switch back to forum questions. I see that there is a question for Nolan. We'll circle back to that. I just want to make sure that everyone's clear. I'm not ignoring questions, but I am trying to bounce back and forth a little bit. All right, so our next forum question is, does Roll20 plan to... Oh, I guess I'm still picking on trivia. My bad. Does Roll20 plan to provide rollable tables as game assets with published marketplace content? A compendium is great, but sometimes a macro is what I need, and rollable tables are useful for macros, etc. That's from Locaber X.
So I'm not 100% sure what this question is asking, but there are two possible answers. One of which is any of our official modules, like Wizards of the Coast or Pathfinder, we've already created rollable tables and macros for everything, like all loot tables, encounter tables, blah, blah, blah. So if it's something that you've purchased from us, they should already be in there. But the other possible answer to this question is...
I'm just going to pause you to say that the Ghosts of
Yes.
Saltmarsh macros and like rollable tables are super cool.
It's really fun to click an encounter macro and have it just spit a whole bunch of things out, or immediately build a ship crew, which is something you could do in Ghosts of Saltmarsh. So the other second answer to the question is, if they're asking if that's ever an item that will be purchasable on the marketplace, like can I buy a rollable table pack or a macro pack? And that's a very interesting question that I will look into. So
Cool. All right. Then I think pretty sure the next one picks on trivia too. We're just being really mean to trivia right now.
Get me, it's okay.
Just spread this out. Jeff and I could definitely do some.
Yeah.
No, it's fine. This is I think the last one for a bit.
It is. But Jay asks, will the Roll20 marketplace ever feature comments and rating systems for potential buyers? Which I know has been an issue that we've talked through a bunch because it's complicated.
Yeah, so it's something that we'd like to do. We're still figuring out exactly how to set that up in a way that minimizes possible abuse, right? Like, if somebody has 20 people come and say this product is terrible due to some personal beef or something like that. So we are also interested in it, but figuring out exactly how that's going to go is still a discussion.
Yeah, we don't want to open our creators up to abuse. We do want, like, we understand that, that would be helpful in some ways to creators and to people who are looking to purchase, but we're trying to do it in a way that is genuinely productive. Okay, so let's go ahead and go back to some chat questions. Woo! You didn't see that. There was no glimpse behind the black mirror. So Nolan, Roger B wants to know, and are you ready for this one? What are your thoughts on fandom's purchase of D&D Beyond?
I don't know. That's somebody else's business. Is a lot of what my thought is. I do wonder what it means in terms of Twitch being the previous, via Amazon being the previous, and fandom, they're very different entities, and so I assume they have very different goals. But that's really not a. I'm much more capable of talking about my business than I am talking about somebody else's.
Fair enough.
Yeah, they're different. just the difference between what fandom is and what Twitch/Amazon is, though, is a lot. And so I think that gives the entire role-playing industry some idea of what might be on the horizon there without a true insider knowledge.
Let's see. Is there any possibility, this is also a question from Roger B, is there any possibility of having community-provided games, or is that too much of a license issue black hole?
Yeah.
What do you mean by community-provided games? Like sort of akin to the character sheets, or
I don't know, Roger B. Can you specify in chat what you're looking at in terms of community-provided games?
I guess it just a large throw out into the universe is like people making 5OGL content and stuff like that is absolutely a thing that the folks can do. I think that the hurdles to that though are many, because it's like not only do you have to kind of know what rules you can and can't play with, but you also have to have and compensate fairly map makers and token makers and writers and editors, and then get it in the interface and have it work end to end. So I mean, it's not something that that everyone is up for, but there's not in so much as you're obeying the laws. We like content, we'll sell it for you.
Mm-hmm.
Is that true? You like content, right? You'll sell
I
it.
love it.
Yeah. We're in agreement. We got this.
Roll20, we like content. All right. Let's try to pick on someone other than trivia for a little while. Let's see, where'd I leave off? Grovinator wants to know, can we get color coding for folders, playlists, and sounds? I suspect, Jeff, that this is right up your alley.
Can we? Well, I think that there's a bit of a question of what exactly we would want when we would establish that kind of feature. I think it's a good idea. I think it could definitely have a lot of value. I don't know. I believe there's not any kind of sort of suggestions for and post in this realm, so I think it would be good there. This is not, I don't believe, on our roadmap, but we do have thoughts and ideas on reworking that structure and that folder structure in general. So I think this kind of thing is certainly possible.
Oddly enough, I think when I hear that question, that thing that I hear more from the community, and I think we're getting more feedback on is things like the color element of it pops to mind. It's like dark mode and different colorblind settings, and I think those are all conversations that we're having more regularly behind the scenes in this realms than an additional
on a regular basis. We are approaching accessibility and visibility from the ground up with just about everything new we do here. So yeah.
So yeah, all right. Well, then whoever sent that in, if you want to make a forum suggestion for it to expand a little bit on what you're looking for with color coding, we can probably get you more useful feedback on it. And is a fix to the disconnect between 3D dice and roll template display on the horizon? That is from Kuro U 1984, who I believe might be Scott.
That is Scott.
Yes, who developed the Pathfinder sheet for us. Or Starfinder. I know. Scott's very nice. I've met him. But I don't know anything about the 3D dice and roll template display here. So what do we know?
So yeah, I think the issue that Scott's talking about here is that the 3D dice, there are a couple discrepancies. A is that when there are above a certain number of dice, I believe it's 20 dice, it'll only show 20. That's, I think, more of an edge case. The other disconnect is that when a roll is made, the actual result won't show until the dice are done rolling.
I think that's probably.
That's probably it. So I don't. At the moment, I don't think we have any direct plans to change that. The roll template appears, and the dice will fall where they may, as it were. So
that's too good.
The
That's
dice
too good a pun to keep going. Yeah.
Yeah, we got to end
Period!
on that
Exclamation.
powerful one.
Yeah.
All right. Next forum question is: will it be possible in a near future to have full screen video chat from Haraxel?
So I don't think that's. As a matter of fact, our most recent WebRTC decision was almost in the opposite direction because we adjusted the quality to make it better connect peer to peer, and so I don't think that's necessarily where it's headed. I do think that we've had some talks about when we want our next pass on WebRTC to be, so that we can. There's some other funky functionality that we've talked about into the mid-far future that would take us circling back around there, and we could have a lot of fun with. But in the meantime, we're other than bug hunting, we're pretty pleased with how the voice and video is working these days. It was a lot more stable, and is getting more use because of that, and we're seeing less friction to it. It used to be the Roll20 voice and video's name was Mud, and that is much less the case for people who are new, and that I think says a lot in terms of just how far that system's come, and just what a good job folks put in on getting the last implementation to really solve. So.
Mm-hmm. All right. All right. So we're on to a tough one. Not really. Well, so John wants to know, when will you reverse the mini banned users from the Reddit kerfuffle? And we did. We no longer run the Reddit, the Roll20 Reddit. Actually, I think the mods there are doing a fantastic job. But even when we left,
I think there were 13 people banned, and half of them were bots.
Yeah,
so
like
there was not a mass banning there. I think one of the things that has been interesting to see is that the excellent moderator staff volunteer group who has nothing to do with us has banned some of the same folks in the wake, and that's I guess that's reassuring in some ways. But yeah, that's not our. We ain't officially on Reddit, so you asked, we answered.
All right. Well, then let's go over to chat because we've had a few chat questions building up on us. Starting with, let's see, has it ever been a consideration to merge Plus and Pro memberships? I love Roll20 services, but I can't see much of a reason to go up to Pro besides specific API scripts. And then they have a suggestion to make a single membership tier above free that merges the benefits of both memberships and cuts down on the overall storage size. They want to know if that's a consideration, and that is from Falcon Hoof 5.
No, there are very few times where I can honestly say that something is not a thing that's truly been considered, and you've stumped me here because we've found that there are different reasons that people are using the different tiers, and that separation, particularly into the API, is one that one of the reasons that it is structured like that is that the API does cost more because of the different server types that it has to spin up and use. And so it made sense for us to put that item in a different place, and that's kind of formed that tier item. I will say though, one thing that we're really looking at is some additional items that make sense behind the two tiers, and reasoning for why they're separated into those tiers. And there's some really good conversations going on about what things we can add in the future. And I think philosophically, I continue to be really pleased with our approach to not working to hamstring. It's Roll20 is still a very usable free product, and that's something that I think we all are pretty proud of. And I like that when we have a new feature, the conversation internally as far as is this free, plus, or pro, and why, makes a lot of sense to my ears and doesn't sound like jerks, and I think builds out good items into the future. So, but no, a mid-tier merge scrunch is not a thing that there's been any talk about.
I will say that I mean, I don't know, like maybe this just specifically helps you or not, but if you do have the option to do the yearly subscription, that does give you savings. you'll save 15% a year, I believe. So that comes out to, I don't know how much a month, probably something like 8-ish a month.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, oddly enough, and this is I don't want
So-
to look at we're literally working right now on some stuff with our subscription page to better present that information to you, because we don't think that we are doing quite enough to show you exactly what the value setup is and going to the yearly route. You can do that math with the calculator on your own. However, we really should put some of that math out front, because it's sitting on the calculator. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
You already have so much to decide. The whole point of Roll20 is that we do the math for you.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll do that dice roll.
And Jeff, Roger B loves the bring your own music feature. And I know that you worked pretty hard on that, so I wanted to make sure you got the kudos.
Thank you. I did work very hard on that. I'm happy people like it. I'm happy you like it.
Let's see. I think we're caught up on chat questions now. If not, someone will let me know from my team, and I will swing back around to it, and we'll go back to forums. Where did I leave off? Here. Boop. All right, so this person sent a question in Portuguese, and no one on staff speaks Portuguese, unfortunately. So we did our best with Google Translate. But if there happens to be someone in chat, or the person who asked the question, Leandro, who wants to correct our translation, we'd be super open to having our translation corrected so we can answer this question accurately.
That is so awesome.
Yeah. The question is, I'm building a game. How do I upload the original editable plugin to the Roll20 site? I think this might actually connect to the question that Roger B was asking earlier about. They were saying, like, if you're a pro user, can you? They elaborated. They were saying, if you're a pro user, is there going to be any possibility that you can upload your game for other people to use? And I think that this is probably similar to that, and maybe also that this is an independent creator who wants to be able to sell through Roll20.
And that is something that when you get into to go into Roger's question in the language I am more fluent in, that there's absolutely, yeah, Roger, that comes tough, because when you get into distribution, that's when rights owners get into things. And so if you're making publicly shareable games, suddenly that public portion of it moves it from being a private item that you are utilizing in terms of your storage and in terms of your enjoyment. And that's what the FBI warnings come for on the on the front of the videotapes. If you're old like me, but that is a much more difficult ask. I don't know what the sanitization method would be there, or the stop on full anarchy. And it's one of those, full anarchy sounds great in theory until all the nice publishers who would like to make money go, well, you're just full anarchy and we don't want to deal with you anymore. And that's a bad route for everybody who wants to use this to save time and wants creators to be able to get paid.
So
I do want to make sure that this question isn't how I'm building a game and how do I get my character sheet on.
Yeah, I want to make sure we address character
that.
sheets and modules as possibilities, since we don't.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that Google doesn't really know what original editable plugin is trying to say. But yeah, let's talk about how you get character sheets on. If Jeff, you could talk about that, and then Trivia, if you could also talk to us about getting modules on, in case that's what the question's about.
Yeah, so if you do have a game that you think would be served by a Roll20 character sheet, which has quite a lot of features and a lot of functionality that you could take use of, then by all means you can sort of dive into creating a character sheet, and that's done with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. There is a guide on our wiki. If you search for building character sheets on our wiki, you can see that there. And if you have a pro membership, you can edit it in your game and see how it looks. And from there, you can then submit it to our GitHub, which is the Roll20-character-sheets GitHub account repository, on which there's a sort of README and guideline to how to submit your game, your character sheet to Roll20 to be included in that dropdown.
All right, so if they're building a module, or if anyone in chat is building a module, Trivia, how would Leandro or some other person submit a module to the marketplace?
Have a form which I will go grab. That's kind of an application to the marketplace. And after that, there are some little contracts to sign. There's a pay ratio that we talk about. And then the creators upload things and they are updated once a month, or excuse me, once a week. Ugh, I'm losing all my words because I was thinking about which URL it was. So yeah, it's a pretty quick and easy process. We take creators who are making maps, who are making tokens, adventures. We are currently still figuring out compendiums to put that in a way that is a little more accessible. Right now,
It's all the
it's pretty intense to make a compendium on Roll20. So we're discussing ways to open that up and also uh, make it easier to navigate as well. As somebody who owns literally everything on the site due to my admin account, when you start getting a lot of compendiums, those lists get real long. So
Super long.
it's a whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily a custom compendium, but having more third-party compendiums. I don't want to use
Well,
that keyword yet,
but actually,
but yeah, you can.
that, no, I think that's a good word to use because I do think that is one of the things that continues to be kind of a block for us. And I've seen Dean discuss this a lot on the forums, and Kenton as well. Is that conceptually, it's like if we open it up with as difficult as it can be to start and make a compendium functional as it is right now, we would sure like to have that functionality better before we opened up some sort of custom compendium, and that's before we get into some of the rights, what I call the any form of the gyre ball or whatever. You take Fireball, you change one letter, and you take somebody else's complete compendium and you dump it out as a custom compendium, and we're off to the races. And that's the sort of thing that is the FBI drops into our dear friends at the Federal Bureau of Investigation come running in and go, "What is this?" And that is not the goal for anyone, I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Oh, but and my Miles Dressbar brought up a good. So if you want to make a module or an add-on adventure, literally just create a game and make it. Like the same way you would if you were a homebrew GM setting it up for your players. That is then how we get it on the marketplace.
Right, and then you just need to become a creator to publish it, which both Trivia and Dressbar have put links to in chat. Uh, would an option for compendium sharing by a pro subscriber who is not the GM be in the future? This is a question from It's Miller Time. So let's say that you are a pro subscriber, you have a lot of compendiums, but you want to be a player in a friend's game, and you want to give your friend access to that while not to access to your compendiums without being a GM in the game yourself.
Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong. The workaround as it exists, and I recognize this as a caveat and a workaround to a functionality that does not currently exist, and I'm not aware of us currently discussing. Making co-GM, can you pull in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you are a co-GM cannot share their compendium with that game, but the current workaround would be to create the game and then promote someone to GM and join as a player yourself.
Yeah. Which is
just remember to keep joining as a player.
Yeah.
Right. But obviously, in so much as that explanation takes, that is not ideal. And I think it would be the sort of thing that we recognize. I will say in this, when we look at design problems like that, it's like, how can we make this as much like kitchen table as possible? And we know we are not there on all aspects of compendium sharing, although the fact that compendium sharing exists as it currently does is definitely a step closer. And that is something that is important and a big step that we've made in this past year.
Yeah.
In terms of making a change.
All right, so let's do a couple of chat questions. Woo. Oh no, I peeked behind the darkness again. I must stop doing that. But okay, so we had a question. Lord of the Zombies stopped by and basically asked for an update on dynamic lighting. We did talk about that at the beginning, Lord of Zombies, and I think you're referring to Advanced Fog of War, which has had issues. It's not so much dynamic lighting. Dynamic lighting, as far as I know, is fine. And if it's not, please let us know.
I think that points out in and of itself an issue here, which is some of the
So
branding on some of this
yeah,
stuff, which is an additional conversation. Like when we say that there's some back to the drawing board on this stuff, we ain't joking. There's some serious conversation about what we want to do with all of this.
yeah. So, yeah, I think, and we also addressed this in this month's rundown, where our dev team has basically been going through and making lists of all of the reports that we get about Advanced Fog of War, and we're working through them. We had worked through one massive list, and then a couple of other things came up to our attention. So we are still working on those. We're still looking at moving forward, like how do we improve this system overall. So I think that's the somewhat shortened answer to your question, but if you want to catch the VOD, you can hear us talk about it in more detail. Our next question is from Lazy Alistair. When will we see more Starfinder content like the Starfinder core rulebook in the marketplace? And I hope Starfinder APs are not too far down the line.
So sort of it's a similar answer with Out of the Abyss and the Return of the Runelords AP, but I will say that there's also Starfinder AP on my production calendar for this year.
Tri-
So
Trivia.
coming,
Am
TM.
I am I very confused? We don't have the Starfinder core rulebook?
We do have the Starfinder core
Okay,
rule
that's what
book
I
out.
thought.
Yes, I'm sorry. So more content like the core rule book is what I was
Oh, I see.
reading it as.
I
So
think your
if you
read
do
is
not know
correct.
that we have the Starfinder core rulebook out, we do have the Starfinder core rulebook out, which will have actually a pretty cool functionality update in the next soon TM. Yeah, we do also have an AP on the calendar as well. So
Mhm.
that is coming.
Cool. Well, talk to us more about your licensing calendar then, Trivia. Um,
Yeah.
this is the one that Trivia answered earlier or addressed earlier. So we'll skate over it just a little bit because it's already been addressed. But any chance we'll be seeing Out of the Abyss on Roll20? We got that from Neil. We got that from Titus. Neil. We got that from Titus. And I think the answer was we would like to. There are
Oh,
other things
it's
that we're
it's on
working
the
on.
calendar.
Yeah.
And I do
Okay.
have a spot slated out for it. However, stuff with definite release dates, like Descent and everything, is our highest priority always. So
Descent.
it happens after that.
Mhm. All right.
And I think I know what the next forum question is too. If we just want to talk about my production calendar for last
Yes,
time,
it
is
is
that it?
related. Are there any
Okay.
plans to release? I put these together because they were pretty related. One is asking about the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide and the Dungeons Master's Guide. The other is asking about the Dungeons Master's Guide specifically. These are from Annie on
Mhm.
D and Unlocking Ice.
So for the Dungeon Master's Guide in particular, the reason why we didn't release Player's Handbook the second we got our deal with D&D is because we didn't want it to just be like a PDF that you read on your web browser, right? Like we wanted to have some cool functionality that really integrated it in with the VTT. And so that's the same thing with the Dungeon Master's Guide. So we have some cool ideas on how to get that with some really
Get that real
interesting,
spicy.
yeah, tabletop functionality. So once those features are in, then we will be able to do the Dungeon Master's Guide. Um, as far as Sword Coast, it is not currently on my list. Like for this, it's not currently on my calendar, but it is on my list. So we're seeing what's possible there too. But I would put that more in a 2020, in a 2019. So.
Ooh, exciting Dungeon Master's Guide stuff. I want to hear more about this, but not on camera. I get to know secrets. Um, all right, and then the next one is a forum question as well. And this is from James, who says, "I want to play D&D, but it would be my first time, so I'm a little nervous. Any tips?"
I want to. This is what I think it's incredibly telling about an individual what their tips is for playing for the first time. So I would, can we all do a version of this answer? Because
Sure.
it's
Like
like
around
a
the
real
world here.
test. Yeah.
Yeah, you start. You volunteered just by saying that.
So I think the number one thing when you are sitting down to play any role playing game for the first time is that you are forgiving to yourself within that process and try to operate from it. And not every table will function with this because every one there are some that are more rules heavy than others. But try to embrace what I've heard referred to by others as a rule of cool. In other words, if it seems cool and everybody likes it, it doesn't break the universe. Allow it to happen. And other than that, just go and do it and try, and you're going to fall on your face a little bit, and that's okay. But do not try to read. If it's Dungeons and Dragons, the Dungeon Master's Guide front to back 3 times and know every page. Like, have a little prep done, but just get into it and have fun. And if you don't know the rule of cool, you're like, we're going to do this, and the skill check is this high, and go, and you will survive, and it will be fantastic, and people will have fun. That would be my first time good luck recommendation. Who wants next?
I want to hear Jeff's.
Well, I feel like I'm gonna have a bias towards the technical capabilities of Roll20, in the sense that definitely check out the LFG. There are a lot of good posts on there. A lot of the value there is being able to see what a DM or potential people who are looking for a DM, what they post, and like what kind of personality they have potentially, what kind of game they want to play. And also a nice way to get your toes wet, as it were, is our fairly recent pug system. So most of those I found are pretty low friction environments, where a lot of times it'll just be kind of text chat. You can hang out and jump into playing some RPGs and maybe never talk to those people again, maybe make a couple of friends, but get an experience where you get more familiar with it. But on a more personal and I guess social note, I think it's really important to realize that I think to some degree, and this is what helped me early on when I started playing on Roll20, we're kind of all nerds. And I mean that in the good way. Like we are here to play RPGs. Yeah.
Brought back out Optimus Prime.
I've got this thing in the middle of building here. This is a Gundam.
I have a dragon.
So while you may not have all the same interests, you're there to play the same thing together. So, hopefully that alleviates a little bit of fear as realizing, we want to play RPGs.
Mm-hmm.
Help me.
Yeah.
My tip for somebody new to playing, maybe not GMing, but playing, and even GMing, sure, is I recommend not writing out like a 15-page backstory for your character. Like, just kind of pick a trope even that you like and just play the trope. Like maybe it's a sneaky rogue who, is always hiding and stealing things out of people's houses, or, an elf wizard who's very aloof. Like, feel free to not need a novel's worth of character description, and just see where the game takes you.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I've spent too long developing a character, they always end up with a group of goofy dorks who, like, we have a very silly game, and so I've just started being really loosey-goosey, and that has improved my gameplay a lot.
My first and most serious character, I was very lucky that somebody gave me that advice, and essentially my backstory was just like, a demon stole my brother, kidnapped my brother, and there was not much, and like I'm after the demon. That was it. And there was no, and so like,
and then you play to find out what happens.
Right. And
did you get the demon?
That character, the demon turned out to be a god, and we went to kill the god. And my character over time, like everybody's backstory is assembled into the point that they could take on this, and but within that, like, we never would have gotten that far and gotten that in depth, and our characters would have had the fantastic backstories that they ended up building over the course of that game if we come into it with a 15-page novella.
Yep.
Yeah.
Who they were before. By being a little bit more of a blank slate of like, demon stole my brother, it allowed that character to form into. It's like Aragorn's story is used to be.
He's a ranger guy,
right? Descendant of somebody,
and was raised by elves.
Right. But you don't need 300
Yeah.
pages of that to get how cool he is in that story, and that's what he was awesome about.
You folks all have useful advice. I don't even know, like, I play D&D, but I don't really know what to say to someone other than just kind of jump in. I guess I maybe come from a little bit of the same kind of biases as Jeff, because I think that the Roll20 Character Mancer is fantastic to helping you build your first character. Also addictive. I cannot tell you how many times I've gone to like take a screenshot or something of the Character Mancer, and I wind up with a
And you
fully
make
fleshed
the
out
whole
character.
thing.
Yeah, and then I really desperately want a game to play in. And like if you're, again, this is my Roll20 bias, but if you are jamming it yourself, the Stranger Things Dungeons and Dragons starter set just came out a couple weeks ago. It's a single session thing. It's themed after the Netflix show. It's basically Mike Wheeler's Notebook, but you play through the game that he developed with his friends. You play as their characters. And if
It's like it's such a perfect like my late middle school D&D experience themed
yeah,
adventure. Like it's very good.
exactly. iCode Smith in chat is saying, give your DM hooks to work with to build a story, not a story they have to build into. And I think that's
Mhm.
extremely well put. Like talking
Yes.
about, building out your 15-page backstory. At that point, your character's already done, and it's so much more fun in this interactive medium that we have to let your interactions with other people shape what your character is. And
Additional good advice from chat, the Roger B with the from a GM's perspective, study on what your character can do and don't worry about everything else. That's my job. He's saying it from the perspective of him being the GM and your player. Again, really notice that the recurring theme in all of this is like, know that you don't have to be responsible for all the stuff, and focus on a small area of responsibility, and don't overfret that. Are you on pizza duty? Yes or no?
Right.
Really good question to ask yourself going into game.
See, now if you're nervous about going into your first game, especially if everyone else is like experienced there, volunteer for pizza duty, because then they have to like you.
How to win friends and influence people.
Right.
Yeah.
I actually forgot a question earlier, but we're having so much fun with this. So I want to
Yeah.
I will circle back to that question. It's the last question that we have from the forum. If there are any other questions that we have from chat, please let us know, because we're coming up on the end of our hour together. But Dress Bar, our very own Dress Bar, says for GMs and players, just try to set expectations and comfort levels. Not every game is going to require that you become a professional voice actor, or writer, or tactician. You can just have fun. And it's very true. I also think that, like, if you want to lean really heavily into tropes, like, I'm an orphan and I can't remember where I'm from and all that kind of stuff, just do it, right? Like, don't oversweat, like, oh, I need to have a character that would be worthy of winning an Oscar with this a movie. No.
Yeah. It really is best to start with a blank slate in media res, and suddenly the world envelops itself around you and you interact with it. That's what I've always found anyway.
All right. And Oracle44 says, don't allow criticism of others, which you may encounter as a new player, dampen your enthusiasm for the game. Make it your own, find your style, and if at first you don't gel with the group well, move on and find your RPG tribe. I think that's really good advice.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. We got a couple more questions to swing back to after I find the question that I missed earlier. There it is. Why has there been nothing addressing the RP Tools DDoS attack? This is a question from Cliff.
It was interesting to see because this was an advanced submitted question. It was interesting to see the reactions among staff in talking about this, because there are folks on staff who don't even know what. So RP Tools and Dugini are both places that we have cached images from, and so we direct folks like we prioritize those in search, essentially to make them available. We're not really in charge of anything there. We're obeying whatever their rules are in terms of what our setup is for what we are and aren't allowed to use from them. We don't have anything to do with, like what their security setups are and what they are and aren't. What we do find, and I think this relates to something that I thought I saw floating in the chat directed towards Jeff, and so I'm going to steal a tiny bit of thunder. in the Falcons question about the bring your own beat being fantastic, and but are there any alternative sound options that we might add, similar to what we've done with Van Burst and SoundCloud in the past? And so, what solutions can we come up with to make a better package for people? And so, in that realm, we think that we do need some more baseline graphics that are freely available for people, and that's something that we're mulling over and trying to figure out what that would encompass and what that looks like. And in the same vein, we've done a version of how do we get your own stuff music-wise into Roll20, but we are also still looking at how could we integrate with some other outside services in a way that made sense.
Yeah. And the main reason for wanting to do sort of like more in-house art and the bring your own beat uploadable audio thing is like we found, and it has been proven that we don't want to be entirely dependent on third-party services for the fundamental feature set of the tabletop. So we're looking very carefully at things that we can do and provide for content, as well as potential future connections to other sources that we can be very confident in, possibly. So
yeah, and so I think that all of this kind of ties together into as we grow to kind of a next level, and some of these third-party services that we're using. Maybe don't have the same Cloudflare protection that we have against DDoS. Right. It goes, okay, is there a solution there, something to deal with that third-party service, or is it more to do with what we can do to, like, what is the actual pain point for you? The pain point is, I need free stuff to use in my game, and so what we need to fix is that, and we are aware of that and talking about it. But it was really I really appreciated this question because it was really interesting for the historical conversation that happened around, like, wait, what? That's a thing? It's like, yeah, that is in the code and the thing, and yep, it does that. So.
We learn things every day. All right, so we have one final question from chat that I'm seeing, because we did wind up addressing the one that Falcon Hoof sent to us. So this question is from King's Tears. I purchased Last Mine of Phandelver on Roll20. When I went to add a map or encounter, none of the tokens that are on the included maps are in my library. How do I use the same tokens in my added maps?
I have an answer.
All right, Trivia, go.
All right, so when you have a module or an add-on, you won't find the tokens or the creatures in your art library. You will find them in the journal. So you want to go down to the folder marked monsters and creatures, and you can drag out a new one onto the map, or you can right click any one that already exists and hit copy, and then go to another page and hit paste. Mm-hmm. So there's two ways to handle that for you.
All right. All right, so that's all the questions that we have today, and it wraps up very nicely at 12 o'clock Pacific. So that's all the time we have for today as well. Thank you very much to Nolan, Trivia, and Jeff for joining me on this little roundtable. We will have a VOD ready after the show, not immediately, probably Monday is my guess. And we'll also post a summary in the forums next week. So thank you all for joining us. And if you have any other questions for us, either wait for the next roundtable or hit us up on the forums. We do read those, and we are looking forward to hearing from you. Thanks, everyone. I'm told
Didn't
that
get a doggo
I'm
feature?
told I have to show dogs. I'm sorry. We'll come back.
The doggo feature was promised, I
the
guess.
The doggo feature was promised. Here he is. He's having a nap.
Oh, nice.
That is a full comeback.
Yes. Yeah,
Curtain
we had to come
call
back. There's another one.
For doggo.
Where is she? There she is.
There she is.
Hi.
My cameo?
Welcome to the round table.
This is Yuki. She is my executive assistant, and she's very good at her job. All right. Now we're going for real. Bye, everyone.
Bye.